Okay, hello, this is Sharonda, and this is my podcast as well as my YouTube channel, Spiritual Sense. Today is Friday, which is January the 20th. And in this podcast, as well as YouTube channel, I'll go over topics in regards to the paranormal, occult, supernatural. And I like to start off by saying that this podcast, as well as this YouTube channel, is for entertainment purposes. It's not a biblical nor religious podcast, although I may bring up the biblical text if I am urged or encouraged to do so. So the topic for today, I'm going to say the voice of wisdom, but for a lack of a actual good topic to use for today, um, I'm going to speak about how God communicates to us. You know, it may not necessarily be how He communicates with you, but I do feel as though God has a way of communicating things to us to provide us clarity, understanding about something apart from what is popular or norm. So, as I mentioned when I did my tarot card reading um, a few moments ago that I just recorded, I said that He kept putting a song in my being, into my spirit, just about all of last night. And I can't even remember what the song is now. It'll come to me, I think, if not by the time of this podcast, probably after the closing of the podcast. And it was over and over, repetitive, over and over again. And oftentimes, um, when he does that, there's some type of revelation that needs to be conveyed by way of him putting it in my spirit by way of song. And so, in essence, um, that's what prompted me to want to speak today. Because not only did he put revelation in me by way of song, but he began to give me insight about the information that presents to me in regards to health related. And he says, I will have you conditioned in such a way that when you begin to look at words and shapes and colors and things of the sort, you would get an inclination about something that transpired not only with yourself but in others. He said, but you keep certain things on the inside because everybody's not going to want to hear that, particularly when you have not been, quote, formally trained to speak on such topics, because the first thing they would think that you're doing is trying to tell them what to do. And oftentimes, when people have been adorned certain spirit related job fields, it's because of a certain specific respect or a lack thereof. So there's no need to prove anything to anybody, is what he mentions to me. He said, oftentimes you'll find that a lot of people have more respect for you than they will let on to know. But because of jealousy and feelings of inadequacy, they're not going to make that apparent to you. But they will come sit around you and study you and then market and profit off of you, is what he mentioned to me. And who is he? The Spirit. The Spirit. So I'm going to say that this podcast topic for this podcast episode for today is entitled The Voice of Wisdom. So as a guide, I'm on a website. It is Bible Hub, and as I mentioned, I'm not a biblical person. This is not a biblical or a religious podcast. Again, this is not a biblical or religious podcast nor YouTube channel. I may refer back to the text, but ultimately, I cannot argue with the next person about what is written in the biblical text, because I have my own revelation. I think it's based on the perspective of the individual. You know, if you're someone that's keen to see things on a medical or health related perspective, okay, then you may see it that way, versus somebody who has been geared to see things in a more spiritual aspect of it. They may see it that way, or someone may be keen to see it more of a, it's different ways of seeing things and reading things ultimately. But we all have, or most of us have, common sense, common knowledge to know what is being conveyed. Okay? So I'm on this website. It mentions about the voice of wisdom. Proverbs 1:20 through 23, wisdom cries without. She utters her voice in the streets. So it mentions that wisdom is here personified. It is the language of poetic inspiration. Later on in the dispensation of the fullness of times, wisdom was manifested in human form and spake in the hearing of men, but its voice has never been silent altogether. From the beginning until now, we are reminded of it. So I do believe that wisdom is a voice of reasoning, understanding. It's a soft stillness. I mentioned that it's kind of put you in the mind of Tinkerbell, so to speak. It's kind of words. It's like a sparkle, like a twinkling, is what it's like. And when you hear it, you will know it. You will know it. I cannot sit here and say that this is something that I have experienced 5 times or even 6 times. I've experienced it a few times, I say, and but you would instantaneously know when the voice of reason or wisdom come to you, as such. So it says that there are many channels through which wisdom utters its voice. The plural form of the word wisdoms suggests the manifoldness of the utterance. God teaches us His truth, makes known His mind to us through the objects and laws of the physical world around us. So He will, make things apparent to us by way of when something is written in such a way to confuse or deceive the Nimrod, or the ones who don't think rationally, or who are out of sync of common sense, common knowledge. Two, the constitution of our own frame. The makeup of us in terms of our own being. As a person, as an individual, you would know the basic wrongs and rights and the basic needs and necessities of a person. Three, the teachings of our spiritual nature, the judgments in our conscience, and the conclusions of our reason. So you will have reason to understand when something is not right, when something is out of the norm, not characteristically kosher. His provincial orderings is what it mentioned. Something that is extreme versus something that is trivial. The admonitions of His Spirit is what it mentioned. Let me look this word up. I don't know exactly what this word is, but I will proceed to look this word up. The admonitions. And a lot of these words you will find are, made up words. It says an act or action of admonitions. Admonitions. Authoritative. Counsel or warning. A reprimand. Okay? The words of Jesus. He is the wisdom of God, is what it mentions. So it mentions that the voice of wisdom is audible to all who will listen. Wisdom crieth without. She utters her voice in the streets. She crieth in the chief place of concourse. Wisdom, divine truth, does not merely whisper its doctrine in secret places where there are few to hear. She does not reserve her teaching to the closed classroom to which only some favored ones find admittance. She speaks in the open where the ways meet, in the chief places of concourse, upon whom doth not God's light arise. The friendly voices speak in the ear of childhood. They address the mind of youth. They have a message for manhood. They find their way to the sanctuary of age. Wisdom waits upon the pure and holy, walks by the side of the spiritual indifference to win its ear, and confronts sin in its most secret haunts. Nothing or nothing but the most hardened inequity, which calls evil good and good evil, shuts his door so fast that the monitory voice cannot enter the chambers of the soul. So, in other words, it mentions that wisdom will not try to keep someone from having things that they need. But you will begin to understand that it's to the contrary because, in certain circumstances, we all, as human beings on this earth, I mean, common sense will tell you we all would need food, shelter, water, um, clothing, cleanliness. I mean, this is a given. That's common sense, common knowledge. That's the God within you to already know that. But a part of, when there's abundance and things of that nature, then you'll begin to realize that is this truly wisdom or is this something else that speaks to me? Because I don't think God wants us to be without, and I do feel as though He wants us to be in a comfortable level, and if being in a comfortable level means being in a in such a matter to where you have a comfortable, nice lifestyle, okay, that's fine. But when it's in an abundance is when it becomes out of hand. That's what I feel. Um, and what I mean by abundance, I don't mean to say abundance. What I mean is greed. Is what I'm getting at, for lack of a better word. So it says that wisdom speaks with a holy and loving energy. Wisdom crieth, utters her voice in the streets. There is an energy and an urgency in her tones and in her language. The utterance of wisdom is none other than the voice of God. It is our Father who pleads with us. It is our Savior who calls to us. It is our divine friend who implores us. It is no hard voice as of a court doomster that assaults us. It is the pleading, plaintive, pathetic voice of one who loves us with the fatherly affection and yearns over us with more than motherly solid solicitude that arrests us in our course and touches the tender and sacred feelings of our heart. So I'm going to explain to you what it revealed to me. You will begin to notice that you are taking on the impressions and you are tapping into the thoughts of whoever is above that situation. So that's basically what that is. And oftentimes, through deception and confusion, when you begin to tell on the thoughts of others and the desires of others, people will set out to do you in. So once you have begin to know and take note of that, this is why you have the formulation of the English language is to protect certain individuals against spirit, because once spirit has stepped in, it's going to reveal to you where it is coming from. As I mentioned on yesterday when I did my podcast, I said God will put you in such a manner to where it will protect you from those who come to what? Steal, kill, and destroy. Okay? So you will be guided. Who would know all of the things there is to know in this life experience? Who would know that? Some people are mind are conditioned to see things on a certain level and they can't see apart from, I guess the word I'm getting at is naive. Some individuals in this life experience, we all would be naive or have been naive at one point in time. But you got some people, they are so naive to where they can't see apart from what is being told to them. And so that's in essence is essentially what that is, okay? So it says that wisdom spares not to tell us exactly what we are. She does not mince her words. She does not cut away the knots of the cord with which we are to be steered to newness of life. She calls men simpletons, scorners, fools, and upbraids them for their stupidity and their folly. When we listen to the voices which are from above, we must expect plain speaking. We must not start back with offense if we find ourselves condemned in strong terms. The man follows the narrative which transfixes the cruel and heartless robber of his neighbors, all ye fools and blind, said the wisdom of God. As he rebuked the hypocrisy of his day, we are not to be repelled from, but attracted to, the man who, speaking for the only wise God, puts sacred truths into the strongest and even the sternest language. So I'm not going to even try to interpret all of this, but I'm going to give you an inclination as to what comes to me. Of course, if someone is in a limited mindset, particularly prejudiced or discriminatory, they're going to want things to be in their accordance. So, um, you got to realize that the biggest trick the devil ever pulled was what? Convinced the world he and she did not exist. So when you begin to tell on the thoughts of these individuals, they will come against you by the masses. It's just that plain and simple. Plain and simple. And like the saying goes, what happens in Vegas, what stays in Vegas. That means what he puts on the inside, once revelation come to you, don't go out here foolishly and telling people that they're stupid. Because when you begin to do that, they will get offended because that's what they have. That's when the revelation has come to them. Oftentimes, and sometimes the truth is hard to swallow. It's hard to swallow the truth. It's hard to stomach the truth. Many people cannot handle the truth, plain and simple. So there's no need to try to prove anything to anybody. There's no need to try to convey or profess to anybody because oftentimes if someone is stupid, 9 times out of 10, they already have come to that revelation, or realization is what I should say. So as I mentioned, wisdom comes to those that he chooses for it to come to. Wisdom is something that cannot be bought. It can't be bought. You can't read to get wisdom. You can pray for understanding, but I think wisdom comes to those who make wisdom in itself. I feel is a gift. It is a gift. I think, can you be a wise young person? I think that God will put the makings in a young person to where you will know wisdom will knock at their door. Does wisdom knock at everybody's door? I don't feel like it does. I don't. But ultimately, I think most people have common sense and common knowledge. I do. I do feel that way. But wisdom is enhanced. Words just can't explain it. It's just something that you will have to go through. You will have a higher sensibility and a higher understanding. So God also wants me to convey that it's not necessarily that people who don't have this gift are stupid. They may be limited, and by way of behavior, oftentimes behaviors are being perpetuated by something that is not in agreement with this person. So it could very well be something in regards to food or something physically wise that's going on with this person that perpetuate a lot of these behaviors, because I begin to take note of that in myself. Once you have broken the spirit, then you will what? Let in all types of entities, demonic forces from all venues or all vessels. Like I mentioned on yesterday when I pulled my, I want to say it was the 10, it was either the 8 or the 10 or wands, and I said it looked like a spider, and to me it appeared as though it was a lot of different negative energies coming in, So in a sense, that's similar to what that is like when someone is having some um, behaviors that is out of the norm by way of God will let you know by spirit when something is manifesting in the physical with this person. Okay? So we're going to proceed with the last clause here. It mentions that wisdom seeks to impart its own spirit to its disciples. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. Its aim is spiritual and beneficent. God wounds only that he may heal. He sends poverty of spirit that he may thereby make rich forevermore. He humbles that he may exalt. His one desire is to make us like himself, to put his own spirit within us, that we may be the children of our Father who is in heaven. So, in essence, as I mentioned before, in reading a lot of these biblical texts, I do feel as though a lot of it has been tainted and has been written under the guidance of demonic spirits. And I do feel as though those spirits still are around even to this day. Even to this day. So a lot of the things that when I read, I have to read it in such a manner to where, okay, I'm reading the words, but I'm not going to be too receptive of it because I do feel as though it is a backward way to turn the spirit against itself, because it does present out in such a way to tell on the spirit of somebody, particularly when you're not in agreement with somebody who thinks that they're above you. Like if you are in the company of, let's say, 3 or 4 people, and the person above you thinks that they're better than, and they're prejudiced or whatever the case may be, a lot of times you are picking up on their desires and their thoughts. And they have you programmed in such a manner to where you just react and you just circumvent whatever their desires are. Like you have been so brainwashed and programmed to where you don't even see it. A lot of people oftentimes don't even see that they are being programmed, that they have been programmed. And a lot of times they are so comfortable with getting their way to where they don't even see that a lot of their thoughts and thinking are limited and ignorant, for a lack of a better word, pretty much such as that. But I'm gonna explain to you, God does have a way, and I just only got 1 minute here, so I'm gonna hurry up and close up. A way of conveying things to us when something is not in agreement with us and when something is contrary to. So if you take note of the spirit and the physical and how you are responding, the spirit within you by way of physicality will respond to when something is not right. God has a way of putting it within you when something is contrary to what is right or kosher. Okay? Because you got to realize in our everyday life, when we are in conversation, oftentimes we don't want to step on many people's toes about or offend people. It works the same way when you are reading a lot of the biblical texts as well. Okay? So I am going to conclude this episode on spiritual sense as well as podcast for my YouTube as well as my Spreaker.com. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you're more than welcome to comment below. Until then, you have a safe and wonderful day. Good day.